Queen Elizabeth II was so many things to so many people, the Commander-in-Chief, a symbol of stability and the grandmother of a nation. She was also a working mum and a global leader in an era where men had more power.
So I sat down with former Prime Minister Gillard to reflect on Her Majesty's legacy and whether Australia should cut ties with the monarchy and become a republic. Gillard, so nice to see you here in London. How did you feel personally about the Queen's passing?
Well, I had the opportunity to meet with her on a number of occasions and enjoyed those meetings. I mean, she could be great fun. I mean, one of the things that I got to do is I went to the royal wedding when Prince William married Kate Middleton, and, you know, the Queen was there at the reception. She came in, no heralding trumpets or anything like that. She just joined the throng that was at the reception after the wedding and was talking about how she'd been down to the disco room that they'd set up for the, you know, after party, how the disco ball lights were making her eyes go round and round, and she could be very, very funny, very, very casual.
So you and the Queen went disco dancing together. I mean, that's how I'm hearing the story.
That would be one way of hearing it. That wouldn't be true, and I'm kind of the patron saint of klutzes, so you don't want to see me dancing. But dealing with her more officially, what always struck me was just, you know, she was a witness to so much history. You know, if you mentioned any event over the full sweep of, you know, 50, 60, 70 years, any global event of significance, she would be able to say, oh, well, I met him, or I met her, or I was there when that happened. And to have that kind of witness to history is truly extraordinary.
What do you think of the new king?
I've met I should be saying King Charles now. Met him when he was Prince Charles, and he's a very thoughtful man, and certainly was someone who was on to environmental and other causes well before the depth of community understanding that we have now about climate change.
You always said that it was when the Queen passed that Australia would move away from being part of the monarchy, and I think our Prime Minister made the point that that discussion is not right now. But at what stage do you think that should take place?
Well, I think we've got a very important thing to do first, which is the referendum around the Indigenous voice. I think before we get to a new Republican referendum, we've got a lot of discussion to have as a nation, and there's no rush.
I've heard many things said about the late Queen this week, including that she was the ultimate feminist. What's your reaction to that?
I certainly think she put a role model of female leadership on the stage, and when I spoke to Theresa May was very clear in her mind that the Queen had been there, had helped normalise images of women's leadership here in the UK. And when you think back on it, how different that was for the early period of her reign, for a woman to be at the forefront, for a husband to literally be walking a step behind, a very different image than people would have been seeing in their families, in the business community, on the stage of politics at the time.
She was 25 on the world stage, dealing with world leaders who were all men. What a time.
And how underestimated. I suspect at the time there were a lot of men in the system who were thinking to themselves, well, we will be able to be the ones that shape and put the thoughts, and she'll be the one on the public stage, but really will be the power. And clearly, over time, she developed her own knowledge, her own identity, her own sense of things.
You look to what she dealt with in 1952, and then fast forward to 2010 when you first became our Prime Minister. Looking back on that now, as I sit here, I don't think we would have copped what you went through.
Yeah, I think, fortunately, we are much more savvy now about the way in which gender, leadership, images of women's leadership all intersect. And the very fact that we are here talking about the loss of the Queen, but contemplating what she might have meant for images of women's leadership, tells us that the conversation has changed, and I think changed in a good way.
Is there any bitterness from you about that period? and some of that treatment?
No. I'm not someone who's kind of living in the past. You know, I want to understand that because I want it to inform what we can do next.
How long before you think we'll see another female Prime Minister in our country?
Well, I'm obviously hoping that my mate Albo is there for many a long year, so I don't want to predict a time. But what is a precursor to having women come through is having political parties get women into Parliament.
We're getting there, just slowly.
We're getting there too slowly.
You are so diplomatic. You know there is a High Commissioner role going here in London. You know, could deal with someone like you.
I've got a full book, not for me. Let me just rule that straight out now. No, thank you.
No wiggle room there?
No wriggle room at all. Should the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister delegate to you the choice, don't ring me.
You've ruled out the High Commissioner role. What about a return to politics in Australia?
I can rule that out for you too.
It's so boring of you.
Yeah, I'm not giving you a big story, sorry.
It was enough. Well done.
Thought maybe, you know, she might think about coming back, but she's living her best life at the moment. Spends half the time here in London, half the time at home, and it was just great to sit down with her, and she's in a really great place doing good things.
She's impressive. And also I love the fact she doesn't engage in day-to-day stuff back home.
I think she has the respect of most Australians because of that.
Yeah. Welcome back to the show. It is good to have your company live from outside Buckingham Palace, special edition of today. We have witnessed an incredibly powerful moment at Westminster Hall this morning. Another one, King Charles III, along with his siblings Princess Anne, Prince Edward, Prince Andrew, holding a vigil in front of Her Majesty's coffin. For more, we're joined by today's talkers. They include Allison Langdon, who you may be familiar with, and Brett McLeod, who is our correspondent over here. Nice to see you, Brett. How are you?
All right.
You've seen a lot of big things in the last 7 days, haven't we? This morning was particularly special again.
Yeah, seeing the four of them walk out, that was quite a majestic moment, because you know that the only time that queue stops moving is when they change the guards every 20 minutes. Hits the stick and everyone goes silent. To see that image of those four people walk out in their most fine battle dress, military dress, the King and the former Queen side by side, you can see why people were stealing glances as they walked past. And I think everyone was trying to have a look at Charles' face. And you see there a lot of, yes, there's sorrow, but I think there's a lot of fatigue as well.
And understandably so. I mean, he was in Cardiff today. That was a really big day for him after what's been an extraordinary week. But
he had a rest day yesterday, but apparently he just fielded calls all day from heads of state. So it's going to take a toll on him. I mean, he's not a young man anymore.
No, that's right. 73 to take on a job of this magnitude, and to also have to. I mean, he's been preparing for this his whole life, but he's still 73, and he's lost his mum. He's lost his mum and his dad in the past 18 months.
Yeah.
I was really interested today to see how it all play out with Prince Andrew walking out in military uniform, because there's been so much debate about that. It's the first time he's been allowed to wear it, being given special permission, and we won't see him in it again. I personally felt like it didn't overshadow the moment of the siblings coming out. I mean, the papers here in the UK might have a different view of it tomorrow morning. What did you think?
I think it would have looked odd if he wasn't in uniform, because the others were. And when he's been in morning suit, as has Harry over the past few days, it did look slightly odd to me. So I know why, because he's been stripped of his titles in disgrace. And that was Charles and Anne's decision to do that he no longer has had the military uniform. But I think in honour of his mother, Charles acceded to that and said, OK, you can do it. And he is still a Vice Admiral. He still is a Falklands veteran.
Yeah. Look, let's talk about this. The Queen Elizabeth II's death not only triggered an outpouring of grief, but it has also triggered, in some quarters, a renewed debate about the Republic. I think Ali's talking to Julia Gillard about that a little bit later in the program. Brett, do you think it's time for that conversation before she's even been laid to rest?
Not now. That's any value in it now.
I can't believe that it's happening.
No, I mean, I think we will trigger that conversation, but I mean, Anthony Albanese's already put that on ice for the next duration of this Parliament.
But there's still people out there doing it. I just think it's so rude.
It doesn't feel like it's going to. You're not going to change anyone's mind now. You might down the track, but let's let King Charles settle into the throne for a while before we have that discussion.
Yeah, Ali?
But I think when you talk to the British people, as we've been doing this past week, a lot of them actually raise this as an issue. A lot of them raise the point as to what do we think Australia is going to do, and they seem to think, and a lot of them often just say, I can't believe you haven't done it as yet. I think it's just going to be one of those things that naturally happens and occurs at some stage, but...
Let me tell you, it's not going to happen while you've got pasty white guys like Peter Fitzsimons and Malcolm Turnbull fronting up the Republican movement in Australia. It's just not going to happen.
I did tell Peter while he was the front of that movement I'd always vote for a monarchy once.
But they've also got dramas inside their own country. I mean, Scotland, I mean, we know that what's going on there with the great debates there and whether or not they should be part of the Constitution. Even in Wales, I saw today.
Yeah.
So they're having these debates, but they're not having them right now. I mean, they have enough respect to wait until she's been laid to rest, which, for goodness sake, she deserves.
Yeah, that's right. But those conversations will happen, particularly in Scotland. There's a very strong independence movement there. Obviously, in Northern Ireland, there's a whole case on its own. And even in Wales, there is a real live question now about whether the United Kingdom can stay united under King Charles.
Yeah, and it's a battle ahead, that's for sure.